Hey everybody, welcome to Hear Us Out. I am Patrick.
And I'm Paul. How's it going?
Not too bad. And we're Hear Us Out. So, Paul, I'm going to get this out of the way good and early for anybody who's worrying that there's going to be a Spider-Man spoiler in here. There will be no spoilers, and there will be very little discussion about actual Spider-Man. Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yep.
The third of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, which is what we're talking about tonight. To be fair, Paul, and I want to make sure that this is considered as absolutely fair. Third movies are hard. Doing a third entry in anything is hard. Back to the Future found it difficult. God knows, many other. Some people don't even like Return of the Jedi. I say, take it easy on the Ewoks. It was a good movie. Third installments are tricky. But what we're going to look at is something that we noticed when we were talking. That third installments in the kind of the comic book genre of movies, that's been extra tricky. And before anybody jumps in going, oh, think about it. Even the Nolan films, do you actually? I should ask. Dark Knight Rises is not your favorite of the three Nolan Batman films, I'm assuming.
No,
right.
No, it's not.
So
not me personally.
Yeah, and not most people. I think it's a fairly safe one. It's a safe hill to climb up and jump on top of. But that means Marvel and DC, everybody involved, have had an equally tough time. When we started thinking about it, Paul, there's way more of them than I thought. Way more.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, because obviously the Marvel films, if we separate out the MCU and some of the other ones, some of the kind of sideline ones, the MCU does do trilogies. It does them in a kind of coherent long plot part of the main universe kind of thing. So there is still third films in there. Iron Man 3 is the last in the Iron Man trilogy. Thor Ragnarok, although very good, is the third in the Thor kind of elements. We don't have an Ant-Man 3 yet, but we know it's probably coming soon.
Quantum
so we don't have a third installment of Doctor Strange yet. And I think so.
Do we even have a second Strange? No, that's the weird thing with coming. The MCU. Yeah, it's Multiverse of Madness. That's the weird thing about the MCU. It's now had so many of its characters appear in other films. You have to forget if that was their second entry or if it was as part of somebody else's movie. Which actually, Paul, with that, before we dip into Marvel, like MCU Marvel, let's go back to the good old days of other Marvel properties. Which came out first? Was it Blade or X-Men? It was Blade, wasn't it?
Blade, yeah. Blade came out first.
And Paul, tell me your favorite Blade movie.
It's going to be two. But the first one has a real special place in my heart.
Me too.
Because it was probably one of the first comic book hero movies I've actually watched.
It was one of the first good ones I ever saw, to be fair. It was one of the first ones that I came out of the cinema thinking, see, it can be done. I also came out thinking, wow, I like Eurobeat dance music way more than I thought. Because I would have been quite the metaler at the time. And I'm like, wow, that underground club scene at the start of Blade really got me into the buzz music for about 15 minutes. But yeah, the one we don't talk about with my... obviously long-term boyfriend Ryan Reynolds in one of his earlier roles in it is Blade Trinity. Yeah. People are very, very hard in this film, and I defend it all the time, but I'm not going to defend it tonight, because when you're talking about tricky third installments,
it does have a lot. It does, yeah. It's a difficult one. Not only is it a third film, it's strived with a bunch of other stuff other than just the plot and stuff like that, which probably didn't help as well. So
no, it gets silly in places, and that's why I love it. I love it in a different I like Blade Trinity in a completely different way than I like Blade the original, the first installment, because they are both silly in ways, but it's how they do their silly. You're like, oh no, this is not going to age well, and by God, it has not aged well. So Paul, that's the first example, the first good, for your first kind of comic book movie, the first good comic book movie I ever saw. By the time they got to a third entry, that was them done, and the quality dropped off. I think the original X-Men was maybe the next.
Yeah, I think it was the next kind of installments. I think it actually started during, I think, the second, like somewhere around the second Blade movie, kind of thing. I think the first one started like either like a couple of maybe a year or so after the second Blade movie.
And maybe let's take us out of it this time. I think everybody agrees the first X-Men movie was actually quite good. It's generally well liked. It gave us Hugh Jackman for the next 600 years. It gave us Hugh Jackman. Anybody that says they knew who Hugh Jackman was before X-Men, you were probably into theatre, and you're not talking about movie star, you're talking about stage guy, which I respect, but it shot him onto the scene something serious. I think critically, X-Men 2, that's the one that gets a lot of the praise and the love. I like both. It's fair to say, Paul, that X-Men 3, The Last Stand, not so much.
Nope. No, I think I think the problem with that is it went a little bit off the rails too much and had two major plots that were like conflicting with each other and quite a lot. And like you could have definitely done one film there doing one plot and then had a continuation. I don't think the X-Men original kind of series needed to be a trilogy. You could have definitely done a quadrilogy and had that fourth film maybe to do with the Grey
Jean
which
Grey.
good storyline, with the kind of with Phoenix and stuff like that. I think that would have been a good continuation.
But I suppose we should probably, just because we're going to be going through these, the why does it go wrong thing. Now, we talked about some of our ideas of why it goes wrong. Number one common reason that I could think of was overstuffing. You try and add too many characters, quite often too many villains, and that'll become a fefeature in a moment. It's when they're like, okay, third film, let's do all our stories, or let's use all our everything. And that's kind of Blade there. They started adding in more characters. They were like, right, now we'll get our Ryan Reynolds and our Jessica Biels, and we'll add in more and more. Same thing for X-Men Last Stand. Like you say, one decent main plot wasn't enough for them. They ended up having this double helix of competing plot lines that were weaving in and out really badly.
Yeah, like it really felt like they were building into a fourth film kind of thing, and just continuing on with the old with the war, the civil war between Magneto and which is Professor X kind of thing. Which would have been a really good, if they focused on it and not had that ending scene, it would have been a really good film, and then we would have been getting a fourth film. But yeah, just chaos and mania kind of thing. And so,
other than overstuffing, I think the other big culprit is trying too hard. And I know that sounds funny, but it's either trying too hard to beat your last entry, which I think Chris Nolan maybe suffered from a little bit there with Dark Knight to Dark Knight Rises, or trying to end your trilogy. And actually, Paul, if you don't mind, we're going to touch on the first moment of Spider-Man-ness tonight, but I'm going to jump all the way into the one that didn't get a trilogy.
Yeah.
I think Amazing Spider-Man, it's a perfect example of something that did all the trilogy problems, or the third movie problems, halfway through its second movie. And I've watched both of these again recently, and it is so weird. You're like, what are you doing? You're making your third film in the last act of your second movie. Tries too hard, starts weaving in plot like there's no tomorrow, trying to set up characters, trying to include characters. It's the most perfect example of third movie ever, and it's a second movie.
This is the interesting thing, because I had this conversation actually with my partner. So who do you think was meant to be the main villain of Spider-Man 2? Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Who was supposed to be?
Who out of the two stories that you know, who do you think was the main villain for the second film?
They leaned on the idea that it was going to be Electro, but I assume that they were going to go kind of the Hobgoblin route for Sinister Six purposes in some way. I don't know.
It's the fact is that they did. Yeah, Electro was meant to be the main character, main villain, and they were meant to the B plot was essentially Harry's like unstability and stuff like that. But money men got involved, and they were like, "Just we want Green Goblin because it means that we can sell toys and shit,
Yeah.
and it also means we can show the Sinister Six gear, which means we could also possibly sell gear and stuff like that." And here's another interesting part. I know I've just gone into witness protection because I probably said something bad.
You're being controversial. It's protecting you.
There was a fourth film planned for that series for the Amazing Spider-Man, which had Emma Stone returning as Gwen as Carnage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So like they had a full intention of more than 3 films and stuff like that. It definitely felt like they were going to tie off the Harry Spider-Man film and the third one, but Moneyman got involved and tanked the second one. That it just meant that there was just no point in continuing on the Harry kind of Spider-Man kind of like, or Green Goblin Spider-Man kind of storyline with it. So
when have money men ever actually made themselves more money by telling creative people what to do? That's the one thing that money people should really have learned about the creative arts so far. Like, put somebody in there to maybe keep them from spending too much, but try not to go in and tell them how to be creative. And you know what? The worst thing for me is Amazing Spider-Man. And as I say, I've watched all the Raimis recently and the two Amazings, and also both of the Hollands in preparation. It was on a pretty good trajectory. Like, Andrew Garfield was doing a good job. It was, it was ticking a lot of boxes. It was quite a good rebirth of Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say it was when Paul Giamatti showed up that I knew something was amiss.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say that that's when it was confirmed for me. Him as Rhino, was that just so we could have like Oscar winner or Oscar nominee on the poster somewhere? I don't know what that was. Why he wanted to do it, why they wanted him to do it, why they did it. I guess why is what I just kept screaming at the screen.
Yeah, like I liked that they introduced him in that second film in the first part where he's just literally driving a truck and he's bashing through things, because it was a nice introduction of kind of like, oh, this person's going to become Rhino at some point. But having it appear at the end in the like Rhino exoskeleton, you're just like, all right, lads, you got to calm your shit with your toy stuff, because like you are stuffing this nearly as much as Raimi's third film, and like that thing is now become a benchmark for stuffing characters.
It really is. But why GM? It's the weirdest casting choice ever. And don't get me wrong, I think a bad accent can work. Like, let's face it, Rounders with John Malkovich, doing his really bad Russian. Bring him to me. It's just an odd choice. But we must move on, because you've now invoked the Raimi, the Spidey Spides. But just before we do, how's the comments getting on? Let's
comments are pretty good, so I'm gonna run into them. So Iron Man 3, Iron Man 2, Thor Ragnarok, Thor Dark World, Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Age of Ultron. I think they're all the third. They're trying to be the third films, I guess, of certain things.
I guess.
I don't know what Iron Man 2 is meant to be the third film of. Iron Man 3 is tough because it really is the fourth, because you can't watch this unless you've seen Avengers. Same goes for Civil War.
This is going to come up again in a moment for sure. Yeah.
But this is the thing is, you can actually watch it like without watching Avengers, because they show and give you enough information about the New York battle that you understand that he has PTSD from it.
Yeah.
Like, they give you enough to be able to watch all 3 films in a row and get that some kind of event in which an is hero kind of thing. Like, yes, it is better for you to watch Avengers and stuff like that, but for the Tony Stark arc of realizing that the iron suit isn't what makes him Iron Man, it's himself.
Which is a little callback to the first of the Holland Spider-Man. If you need the suit, then you don't deserve it, sort of thing.
Yeah, so like that's his arc essentially, that he's like him overbuilding loads of weapon, like loads of armor and stuff like that isn't the thing that makes him Iron Man. It's the fact is that Iron Man and Tony Stark are the same thing.
True. I'm just checking the comments too, and Popculture's on. Hey, Popculture, saw your latest video. Popculture 33. Check out the channel. He's going to be doing Disney Wednesdays from now on, so that's cool. I'm looking forward to that. I'm already looking forward to next Wednesday. But On his channel, and we've talked about Indy 4 in the past, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull being a bit of an issue for us, let's say. Well, Popculture's gone on record saying he likes it. Made a very passionate defense that made a lot of sense, and I respected it a lot. But I also respect the comment of X-Men 3 is to him what Indy 4 is to us. So it's that, yeah, it's the one that you really want to forget. I got you.
Yeah, don't get me started on the introduction of Juggernaut and a lot of other things. Money Men made more money. Tell creative people Turtles movies. The first one too dark for kids. Like one did better in Soul Wars. Yeah, see, this is the thing is there are elements. There's a Kevin Smith's funny story about a production about a giant metal spider, and a super man movie that was going to come out. You remember this story, Kevin Smith producer, and then it turns out that it happened in Westworld or Wild Wild West.
Wild Wild Way, yeah. Giant mechanical spider thing. Yeah, well, sure. What was
Sells toys.
Monster Trucks is a film that was made about 4 or 5 years ago, where there's like an actual monster in a truck.
Yeah.
The story is that like the money dude producer guy walked in, like exec producer type walked in, and their kid had said Monster Truck would be a great movie. And he's like, make it. My 6-year-old will love it. It's like, can your 6-year-old buy tickets to the cinema on their own? Because unless you make something that people will want to bring their kids to, even kids' movies, it doesn't matter how much a kid might think it's cool unless people will bring them and money will be paid. Look at me explaining to money men and money women. You're both as bad as each other. It's equal opportunity. Great comments so far, but Paul, I gotta jump back to the show here for one simple reason. I am dying to burst through the Spider-Mans with you, like Spider-Man 1, the Raimi Spider-Man 1, or the what do you call the kid who I almost called Jake Gyllenhaal there?
Tobey Maguire.
Thank you, Jake Gyllenhaal, Tobey Maguire. It's my mind. They're one of my mind swaps. I liked it. I thought it was good. It's Sam Raimi. All good.
Yeah.
Critics similar, right? It's not a, they did an okay job. Looking back, watching it again recently, I found a few more problems with it than I did, than I'd remembered. But I'm like, well, still stands up. Spider-Man 2, Paul. Like, great, yeah. More critically adored. Again, upward trajectory. People are loving it. So that sets it up for the. It's a good second movie. There's pressure on the third. They had their Tobey Maguire problems with money already, so they were thinking of closing out the trilogy. So when it got to Spider-Man 3, everything on our checklist happened. It was absolutely trying to beat the last film. It was absolutely trying to give itself a chance to close out a trilogy, so to speak. But the overstuffing, you mentioned it earlier on. Like, what happened, Paul? Could they not find any more licenses for villains to stuff into this movie?
So, this is my theory about it, which is going to be very unpopular, I think, because I've already put it past my partner, and it was very unpopular. Roster. My problem is that the roster of villains known by many of the people is very short. Known by general audiences, it tends to be very short. Like, people know the Green Goblin because he is one of the main kind of Spider-Man villains. They know Doc Ock because he is seen as the actual main villain to Spider-Man. And everybody knows Venom, kind of thing. The problem is that by burning essentially Green Goblin, which was a great William Dafoe character in the first one, because you definitely want to build, you want to build a following and stuff like that, and nothing better than having William Dafoe act as a crazy goblin. Like, having which is now I keep getting his second name wrong, Alfred
Molina. Sorry, Molina.
Yeah, as Doc Ock. My God, you couldn't have found a better Doc Ock person. Like, if it felt like they were taking it seriously with an actor like that, and Doc Ock being a serious kind of thing. But that's having them killed off as well. Having two of your main villains for Spider-Man killed off and not be able to return is kind of like okay, so you've just cleared out essentially the clauses of what villains which are good villains you're going to face. So, of course, Venom isn't strong enough to hold up a film by himself in the sense of against Spider-Man,
Yeah.
literally and figuratively, because he needs another body. Sandman is just a good bruiser character that they might as well hammer in. And of course, oh yeah, and they forgot about the whole like Harry storyline that they've literally tried to like swipe under the carpet many a time, kind of thing, and didn't give enough build up as well in the third one. But they might as well shove him in there as well because who knows. So
James Franco it while we have him.
Yeah, so it feels like they were kind of like cobbling together a bunch of people that are known enough or can be introduced enough in the third film to build it.
Lest you forget, they also thought, how about an extra love interest? We've done Mary Jane Watson. Let's get over to Gwen Stacy. It's like anywhere they could find a gap, they thought, well, we better fill that. There's a gap there, and that doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Nothing was paid any due care and attention. But I think it's safe to say that the jazz scene or the emo Peter Parker, whatever way people describe those various bad scenes, that was a new low. But and I think we've possibly even shouted this at each other with a big smile and almost a high five in a pub conversation once. I think the phrase was, and that's the genius of Arkham Asylum. Which is, you don't go killing your villains. I think you were explaining something to me at the time. You were like, and that's the genius of Arkham Asylum. I'm like, yes, don't kill off your villains, even if you think you're only going to make 3 movies, unless you can do it with enough payoff that it's like, okay, you can kill the Joker in The Dark Knight if you need to, because of the way you've done it. You can do these things if you need to, because you know where your story's going and you know your story's going to end. But these movies are not that. They were not Dark Knighting their way through the world. People say, oh, it's really unfair to Spider-Man 3. Having watched it again recently, it's not unfair. Because there's a couple of good movies that could have been made in there somewhere. In fact, in the end, I think if they just made the Sandman movie, they could have found a way to make that similar to, your Mr. Freeze kind of story of you have to do the emotional side of this justice. You don't just Arnold Schwarzenegger it up. If they had, they could have got away with it. But my God, they didn't.
Like that's the thing. So I understand why they got Green Goblin in the first one gives you an emotional change for the Spider-Man character. Norman Osborn is a victim not Norman Osborn. Octavius is essentially a victim rather than an actual villain kind of thing, because the chip gets blown and stuff like that. In your third one, having essentially an actually active reluctant villain kind of thing would have been a really nice kind of I guess kind of filling up the kind of Norman Osborn going insane and actively being a villain, psychopath villain. Doc Ock being a victim himself, and then having a villain that's actually an emotional kind of as you said, Sandman kind of thing, or sorry, Mr. Freeze kind of thing, unwilling kind of villain in the sense of what he needs to do to get better, kind of thing. Would have been a really cool trilogy, It would have told you the story of Spider-Man really, really well, and you could literally build your next 2 films within us by having Brock being introduced as the annoying second photographer. Why?
I actually forgot it wasn't just Gwen Stacy. Sure, Eddie Brock shows up as well. My brain had just given it just Venom as the extra villain, but no, you get the extra pain in the. Hey, look, you know what? Spider-Man 3 missed opportunity. Ended up giving us Amazing Spider-Man, which was then a missed opportunity thanks to, as you covered it, the money men, let's call it. Paul, I'm gonna. This is the one that's gonna probably blow up the comments in some ways. I'm gonna go back to the X-Men for the young X-Men.
Okay.
Now, I'm gonna say that their trajectory was downward. Okay, there's more than 3 films. but it was by the third film that things had kind of lost themselves. I thought the X-Men First Class, I thought it was actually quite good. I liked it. There were plenty of problems with it. Don't get me wrong, plenty of problems. But can you honestly say it's it's a bad film? Let's say. Sorry, catching up in my throat. X-Men Days of Future Past. I actually think it was ambitious, and I'm really glad they went for it. I don't know if they executed well enough. What was your take on Days of Future Past? Actually,
I really liked it, but it felt like they were trying to. They like I guess when I first watched it, I was just like, this in this storyline, that's not meant to be. It's not meant to be. Which is God, my brain has gone completely like Mystique. It's not meant to be Mystique, kind of thing, it's meant to be another person. So like, yeah, I was kind of a bit confused, but I was just like, okay, look, I'm accepting this and going forward, and I really liked it. I really liked the joining of the two, kind of X-Men groups. It was really cool.
Yeah, they even got away with that, exactly how to get in the old cast. But then you're talking X-Men Apocalypse. Let's not even bother touching Dark Phoenix. But X-Men Apocalypse was such a... And you can't stuff an X-Men film because it's already X-Men. There's a lot of stuff going on. That's it's ensemble superhero as it is.
Yeah.
But what you can really do is just do the other two things, which is try way too hard to top your previous entry, which is what I think really brought this one down. And try way too hard to think, if this is a trilogy, then we want to go out strong. We're hoping they were really playing for a fourth film more than being guaranteed it. So it had that real, this could be our last hurrah, let's throw everything at it. And what they ended up throwing was just a load of crap at a dartboard.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, the villain wasn't strong enough, funny enough, even though he was set out to be the most powerful mutant of them all. He wasn't powerful enough. He wasn't controlling enough. Like, no, like, qualms to that actor. Who I actually have no idea who played Apocalypse myself.
It was Oscar Isaacs, and he's a fantastic actor. So,
okay, yeah,
brilliant actor. But gosh,
I think my problem was I think he was put into the wrong position. I think the Apocalypse character was not utilized well. Like, I think he could have been an excellent fourth movie bad guy, but introduced in the third movie kind of thing as a puppet master kind of element, kind of thing. That could have been really good
if they'd introduced him as a Thanos like character in a post credit scene in the first movie. I could see them having worked it out as a Thanos type build up to Apocalypse. Yeah. But they really did just fire, like I say, they just fired him in, and they were like, oh gosh, well, we haven't got our storm yet. Let's see if we can really get this all sorted as quickly as we can. They started scrambling.
Yeah, like they introduced the Four Horsemen a little bit too much, which was just bad because that's like a cornerstone of the X-Men kind of like comics. They introduced literally Apocalypse is Thanos of the X-Men kind of thing. They also didn't bring in Mr. Sinister, his kind of right hand creepy person. So.
Well, look, we still haven't seen Gambit properly portrayed, so I'm gonna move swiftly on from the X-Men before I start on my Gambit rant. Guess who my favorite X-Men is? Paul, the ones that worked. Well, chronologically, I guess it's Captain America, Civil War. That really worked. That's a third movie, and that's brilliant. So, what are we talking about?
It's not really a third movie, is it?
Not at all. It's Avengers, 2.5?
Yeah. It's essentially them covering up Age of Ultron.
Yeah, look at the posters. The Captain America, First Avenger. There's Steve Rogers, one dude. Captain America, Winter Soldier. Look at any of the posters. You've got a maximum of 2 to 3 people. Civil War, they had to have 47 posters just because each character that they were bringing in from everywhere else was getting their own. And when there was a main poster, what is there 9 separate superheroes, and they introduced 10. And Spider-Man shows up.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, like it feels like everyone can make the argument to the fact that like it starts with Captain America. Like the main thing is about his kind of like conflict between his friend Tony Stark and his friends Bucky Barnes, kind of thing. But it's not like you could definitely put that into an Avenger film and have the same thing. Uh, Avengers 1 starts with, I'm fairly sure starts with which goes Tony Stark, or sorry, no, it doesn't. It starts with the facility, but like, there you go. There's my like, you could have just started with anything in the Civil War thing, and then pivoted to Captain America, kind of thing. Although like a lot of the main kind of plot, like main things are around Captain America, they're around a lot of them. Like it slowly builds into an ensemble piece quickly, too quickly.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I love all of the Captain America movies, technically, because I like the first, I like the second, and this is the third. But it does not qualify for what we are talking about tonight. The whole tricky third movie, and when people go, "Oh, well, did they not just overstuff it?" No, they like it's a full cheat. It's a full cheat by already having Avengers movies and making this essentially a bonus Avengers movie, while also Kevin Feige looking over at DC and everybody going, "So you're doing Batman versus Superman, are you? Right. So you're gonna have two tentpole guys head to head. Yeah, no, we've just got a Captain America film coming out where all the posters are going to be Captain America versus Iron Man. It was such a power move, like fair play. That's why Kevin Feige would scare me if I saw him down a dark alley. I'd be like, no. Whatever I'm thinking of doing next, you're going to do it better and ruin me.
Yeah, and also just say it in a real nice way. Yeah, no, that's the whole thing. It's a combination of essentially it's an ensemble movie. It is like, if we really want to fight the point, it is overstuffed, but it plays too much on like a hero kind of ensemble cast, like in the kind of formula in which Marvel has gone. This doesn't follow essentially any of the, like, it doesn't follow any of the single hero movie which goes film formulas.
Yeah.
This follows the Avengers formula, kind of thing. So
it's an Avengers movie. It's one of my favorite Avengers movies. But it's definitely an Avengers movie. Also, anybody wants to say, "Oh, what about overstuffing?" Yeah, but they don't overstuff it with villains. Think about Civil War. There isn't, there's one bad guy. Okay, Zemo's brilliant, but it's not like they threw in. They didn't unroll Thanos. They didn't roll him out early just to get this one across the line. But Paul, that leads us on to Thor, which Thor first one, really enjoyed it. For the second one, I think we all know where I stand on the Dark World. Thor Ragnarok, absolutely love it. It's not just a third Thor movie, though. They pulled a slight Captain America Civil War on it.
This is where I disagree with you, which people love this
Brilliant
kind of thing. Although it is very much on the lines of it is very close to what they did with Civil War. They introduce a large amount of characters in this themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And also like the majority, there's only literally about 3 characters that we know prior to this film that are kind of like, no, that's not true, because there's also one of the warriors, one of the, what are they called, the
his mates essentially.
Yeah. But yeah, like this, they introduce the majority of the characters in this. There's literally 3 characters that they don't, kind of thing, that they do build it around, kind of thing. But with a Thor film, one of those characters has always been there, so it's definitely like the only one that I have to say is Hulk is literally the only add-on kind of part to it, and it's. But you could argue that in the second Captain America film with Bucky Barnes, he had a second person kind of thing. I know that they introduced Bucky Barnes.
I'm so glad you disagree. I'm so glad you disagree, because it gives me the opportunity to lay it out very simply why. Because I understand, and I think your reasoning is impeccable. But there's one thing. It's the Hulk. the one character in all of the Avengers that, you know, people are like, when's Hulk getting their own movie? That's why Thor Ragnarok is not a Thor Part 3 for me. It's as close as anybody was getting at the time to a Hulk movie. People are like, oh my god, I'm getting a Thor and Hulk movie. Ever since they punched each other in Avengers, Thor and Hulk movie, please. And then that great, you know, the ad lib. Did you hear the story about where I know him? I know him from work. You know where Hulk comes out in the arena, and Thor's like, yay, and then he's like, oh, I know him from work. Apparently, there was a kid on set that day as part of like the Make-A-Wish Foundation who suggested that line. And if that's true, that makes me so happy. But yeah, my argument would be, and I think yours is the stronger and fairer argument. But for the sake of putting this together, I say Thor 3 is a bit of a cheat, even though it's brilliant. It's a bit of a cheat because it uses the fact that the one character that they brought in as their kind of team up is the one that people are like, well, we know we can't get a movie for this guy. This is as close to a Hulk movie as we're going to get. Now, little did they know they were going to get an awful lot of a Banner movie, but that's part of the Hulk.
Like I'll agree. I agree that this is like the cheatiest you can get away with. Like, they are literally pushing the line. Like, I'm saying that they're like, you were like on the line of being like, you know, to me for being over this, like that kind of thing. Because like yeah, it's just introducing Hulk, which is the only added person onto us, which is a strong person, I will agree. But until you actually introduce, like, Thor Ragnarok was probably the best stepping stone for there being a single Hulk film, like, you know, kind of thing. As in, you could have definitely off the back of Thor Ragnarok had a Hulk film.
Oh yeah. Well, if they didn't have the universal distribution issue, that we would have had a Hulk film so many years ago. But you know what, Paul? I love that we're both, because we're not very far away. Because I'm close to the line, I'm just above. You're close to the line, and they're just below. So fair play.
Yeah, like it's not Captain America and Thor Dark World position that we both hold. This is literally just like which is literally just on the other side of the path, kind of going like, this is as close as I would allow. Yeah, you know. Well,
commenters, you beautiful people out there live, but also you lovely people in the future, let us know. Does Thor Ragnarok, does it deserve the cheat moniker I'm giving it for part 3? Or does it deserve they got away with it and it's a great part 3 that Paul's given it? Because there's no denying it is a great third entry. Maybe of all the third entries that will give any legitimacy to, I think it maybe is the best. For me, like let's throw up the Iron Man. For me, Thor Ragnarok is far superior to Iron Man 3. I think it's a better movie. I love Iron Man. But the more I go back and watch Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3, the weirder I feel, because Iron Man 2's got so many issues, yet had so much promise and so much potential. It's good, but it's not great. It's not terrible, but and then Iron Man 3 just amplifies that tenfold. I'm like, do I like it? I don't know if I like Iron Man 3, but I don't know if I don't like Iron Man 3.
Iron Man 2 is as close to a War Machine movie as we're ever going to get.
It's true. Well,
and I know that we might, there is a possibility. My problem with the Iron Man films is Iron Man 1 is an absolute masterpiece under my eyes. Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3, my problem is when you have this, like, because they haven't properly introduced Richard Reed yet, you've literally the smartest man on the planet essentially going up against anyone, and you're just like, all we're looking for is just the cool toys. Now, we got Iron Man 3 with all the armors, which was a cool moment. Bad guy didn't seem that dangerous. Like, and I don't mean the Mongolian. I really mean AIM. They really neutered AIM. AIM is literally like Hydra, just with technology, and like they really neutered them quickly.
Don't get me wrong. I love Guy Pearce, but I'm with you. They didn't. It wasn't. It was a big downfall. Now, again, do you dislike Iron Man 3?
No.
But do you really like it?
No.
See, what the hell? What is Iron Man 3? Is it like a very decent regular sandwich?
Iron Man 3 is what I wish every single third movie could be, as in, except for the really good ones. I wish it was the baseline for all third movies, kind of going,
Gotcha.
yeah, I enjoyed it, but it's not the most lovable thing in the world kind of thing. Because if that was the baseline, man, Spider-Man 3 Rami would have been really good.
Yeah, it's true.
Would have been way better than what it is now. Like,
It's true.
you know.
And we have a few comments. Iron Man 3. Enjoy Iron Man 3 each time I watch it. Dislike Iron Man 2 each time I watch it. I completely get that. And then Kitty Cat says Ragnarok's my favorite Marvel film. I can completely see why. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Don't know if it's my favorite, but by gosh, if I have to pick a good one, it's never going to be that far away from my choices.
What I really like about the Marvel films is every time they bring out a new one, I have to reshuffle the list, kind of thing. And sometimes that can be a bad thing. But like my problem with the Iron Man films is Iron Man 1 was a masterpiece because it's an origin film. Iron Man 2, the villain's not strong enough. Justin Hammer and Whiplash, they're not strong enough people.
And they're not done any decent service either. I think both of those, you can't really blame the actors, I don't think, because let's face it, they cast really well and quite interestingly. And bringing Black Widow in, it was on paper it could have worked, but they didn't execute. They did not execute. It could have been Spider-Man 2. It could have been Raimi's Spider-Man 2 if Justin Hammer hadn't been made a joke, maybe, and if Whiplash hadn't been made a joke, maybe. Maybe if they just hadn't made everything a joke, it could have worked out. Now that I think of it,
like the importance of him making an arc reactor by himself is such an amazing thing that alone should make him really, really dangerous. But and also the possible introduction of the armor wars. But no, they made him play a horrible accented and then I really like Sam Rockwell. Sam Rockwell would have been really kind of good. Let me just remove that.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm not
actually, yeah. Sorry, I will. Somebody's in here doing dumb stuff, and my options aren't coming up. Here we go. Sorry, folks. We have some live stuff that we will probably have to ignore, Paul, because it seems like they're going to keep coming back, and we'll remove them later. Anyway, yeah, if they're going to keep going, we're going to have to just ignore it. Paul, I will say that we've probably buried the lead long enough. How about we move over to where you have to watch your tongue? But I would say where I'm at with Spider-Man, Tom Holland Spider-Man, is that there is no absolute guarantee that it's going to be good. And I know you can say whether it is or isn't, so please don't. But the reason I think it'll work fine, even though it looks like it's stuffing villains in, it's stuffing them in from a whole other end of the world. Have I deleted them all now? I hope I have.
I think they've been deleted, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to try and get my head back on. Sorry, folks, distracted there. You can overstuff. It's the MCU now. You can do expansion all you want. Captain America Civil War proved that. We just talked about it. They can go and try and close out the trilogy on it because they know they can just start one up. This isn't really even Spider-Man's third film. He's been in Civil War. He's been in others. He's been around. This is more than a third film. And now we know he's going to do more. Do they really have to try that hard to beat the second entry? Was Far From Home bad? No. Was Far From Home leagues ahead of Homecoming? No. It just wasn't. This is not one of those times where you're really on such a massive upward slope that you better keep going or else. I think both of the first two Tom Holland Spider-Man movies were good. I really enjoy Homecoming, and I thought Far From Home had some great stuff in it. Had some flaws, but it's not like they're in a position where, wow, people are gonna, we're gonna be Dark Knighted on this because they're never gonna forget Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio, because as great as it was, it didn't overwrite everything. So, Paul, say what you can without saying anything at all.
Oh, I'm going to focus on the first two films.
Okay.
the first two films are really good because they bypass essentially the origin problem, because Spider-Man is essentially the second most known origin story in the world, other than Batman himself, and that's mostly because Batman won't ever let us forget the fact that his parents were murdered. So bypassing that origin story and just going to kind of having him, like, an introduction by Tony Stark brings him into the wider universe and stuff like that, and gives him validity, gives him value, kind of thing. So like, it was just really smart idea. So it doesn't feel like the regular introduction to a story, or to a character, or to a trilogy of kind of movies. The second one is kind of, they decided to go a different route of it, kind of thing. Like, it's connected into the universe a little bit more, and it's more about the story of kind of a mentor being removed, kind of, and a dear friend kind of thing, father figure, person you look up to, has been removed. Like,
you got to keep your eyes off the chat when you're talking, because that's a great line. It just made me laugh too.
Yeah.
What? Batman's parents were murdered? And look, if you don't know, in any Spider-Man universe, if you've never been around it, if you see a chap called Ben and he happens to have a nephew, doesn't end well for him, all right?
Yes, well, this is the interesting thing. Iron Man, Tony Stark actually took the brunt of the Uncle Ben kind of moment in the second film, kind of thing, a little bit.
Yeah.
But because you can't obviously replace Uncle Ben or anyone. So, but Tony Stark took that brunt of kind of like, a person to look up to, a hero to try emulate, kind of thing, which was another great point to it. So this was a franchise that was going up, and it's done its own thing with its own villains and stuff like that. It hasn't brought in any of the villains that are known widely by any of the other kind of heroes yet, or anything like that. And it just feels like the cheat here is the fact is that they've always had another MCU player known by everybody in it to kind of show that it's part of the MCU, kind of thing. Give us a familiar face element, which is what, like, everybody knows that Doctor Strange is in the third film, that he essentially replaces, like, Tony Stark as a known figure within the MCU, other than Happy from the Nick Fury as well. Yeah. Nick Fury and Happy in the second one, kind of thing. So there's always been a character there, part of the MCU, being there with him, which is where I think they have cheated a little bit, in the sense of being able to prop up the character, not prop him up in the kind of like that he needed propping, but adding him into the whole kind of universe.
Smoothing the way. Yeah, and you know what?
That's a good way.
I said it a little earlier that he's had, 5 or 6 entries now, technically, when you look at the credits. You've just made me think, realistically, they not only did they do the smart thing and avoid doing another origin story, they did the smart thing and introduced him in a way that they didn't show his origin story. Because when he shows up in Captain America Civil War, there is no Uncle Ben, Aunt May kind of... There's no how did you become Spider-Man massive moment. It's just like, okay, we're introducing Peter Parker. We all know who Peter Parker is going to be. By the way, also, all of the rest of the MCU, except for the Hulk, are going to be here in a minute, because it's Captain America Civil War, and it's great. But that meant that he never had a first movie. Even the first solo movie, Homecoming, wasn't really a first Spider-Man movie, not in the conventional sense. So that means there isn't really a second or a third. And like you say, not holding his hand along the way, but smoothing the water and making sure everything's acceptable is... You've got your Iron Man twice, and I guess now you're looking Doctor Strange and others, but let's not talk. So Paul, because I haven't seen it, I'm giving this the... I'm expecting it to be good. So I'm using the Tom Holland, I'm not losing my mind gif, but I'm using the Tom Holland we'll see gif. So I know that you can tell us maybe next week or another time we'll talk about it. But right now, I'm confident that Spider-Man No Way Home is going to beat the curse and won't be a terrible third entry for all of the reasons that we've just talked about.
Yeah. like that's yeah. We'll talk about it. I don't like as part of a part of my press kind of viewing was literally just like no spoilers kind of thing. So yeah, I'm being as careful as I possibly can because I don't want to in any way.
Well, I will keep you safe by saying, folks, we've run through it all now. So I'm going to go back to the comments, and I'm just going to say, did you just throw in a poll? Is that what you were typing away? You weren't listening to me? Damn you!
I was listening to you.
Well,
I was also trying to be careful because if I listen to you too much, I may say something by mistake.
That's a fair point. That was a good move. But in the comments, we've got Kitty Cat's asking, why can't there be a Hulk movie? Much in the same way that there's a lot of confusion that Spider-Man is a Marvel character, but Sony released the movies, and he's not owned by Sony. The film rights for Spider-Man and related characters are owned by Sony. So it's a Sony-Marvel cooperation that has the Spider-Man that we're talking about. When it comes to Hulk, if you've ever been to Universal Studios, or I have a picture actually, I was in Universal Studios around the time of the Ang Lee one, I think it was, and they still had some of their Hulk stuff up. Universal are very, very proud of the fact that they have some of the distribution and ownership rights that they bought. So back before Marvel were worth billions, they were going bankrupt and were selling off the silverware to keep afloat. And then Jon Favreau and Tony Stark had coffee and thought, we can probably make a movie out of Iron Man, and that turned everything right around.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so history has changed forever. What's the question? I have to look at the poll because I don't get this.
It's actually just who's your favorite Spider-Man?
How come I don't get the vote? Darn it!
Because you're here site.
Oh
yeah. Yeah. So the Hulk film is kind of never going to come because also not only is Universal got the ownership, also Hulk until Ragnarok wasn't a coherent character. And then they decided to absolutely butcher the character by having Professor Hulk suddenly introduced, and
let's not open that old wound. My spider sense just tingled, going, trigger words for Paul have just been said. Professor Hulk. I am going to say, is the poll closed? Shall I end the poll to see what the results are?
Yeah, go for it. I think for sure. So I thought it would be funny.
What was the result? Because actually, before you tell me the result, who would you have picked?
Oh, that is a difficult one for me. I probably. Oh, I'm gonna go for Tom. Go for Tom.
Me too. Although I will say Andrew Garfield did nearly tilt me for a bit. Tobey Maguire.
I know Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. It's just a different to me. It's just a different tone.
Yeah,
and it's got the best connotation of Doc Ock.
Yeah. Again, good films, but him essentially. You know what? If Jake Gyllenhaal, who I swap in for him quite often, if he'd actually been cast in the Raimi movies, he might be my choice. There you go. I'll be weird. I love that you called them Andrew Spider-Man, Tom Spider-Man, and Toby. It's just like the Spiderman family. You know the kids next door, Andrew, Tom, and Toby. Folks, we got to get out of here. So I'm just checking for any last comments before we go.
I think
West Coast Disneyland get Marvel, East Coast Universal Studios get Marvel. Wow. It's so weird when you think of all the deals and all the way things are split in the MCU. It's amazing that they've managed to make as much money as they have. Although Disney buying them and buying Fox and buying Sony next, who knows? Eventually Disney will just open the wallet and get everything back. Who knows?
Pretty much.
All right, well then shout at us in the comments. Please don't forget all caps means you're shouting. But whatever you do, if you want to like, if you want to subscribe. We thank you for watching. I would love to hear everybody's thoughts out there on this crazy idea that there is a bit of a curse on the third movie for comic book movies. Have we made a good enough case to pass that across? Most importantly, get that Thor Ragnarok debate going hot and strong in the comments. Remember, comments mean algorithm, and algorithm means something, and Google is spelt with a G and two O's. Help me out here, Paul.
So on top, so we want to hear, do you think that Ragnarok is a cheat or not? But the other thing is, are there other films are there other third films that do like work really well, that kind of like are adjacent to comic books, like sci-fi trilogies or something like that, that might also tip the scales, kind of thing? But thanks for watching. Which gives comment down and all that kind of stuff, as Patrick says. I've been Paul.
I've been Patrick.
And we've been Hear Us Out.
And we will see you next time when Paul can possibly talk about having seen Spider-Man.
Oh, it's going to be so good. Oh, I'm going to explode.